here. That one went through a fletch. Nice. Both bows are pretty well sighted in. Got to tweak them maybe an inch or two. Well, I hope everybody's doing okay. I'm gonna do a video on my bows that I shoot. I've been on Matthews Pro staff, I don't know, 12 years probably, and I shot fingers for 52 seasons. And the reason I went on Matthews staff is because when I started, or when I was starting to look for a new bow, I had been shooting Golden Eagle because I represented Golden Eagle, and I shot their Evolution, and it shot fingers well. It had a 7-inch brace height, a longer brace height, and it was a 41-inch axle to axle, so it was very forgiving. And it was a 65% let-off. So when I went to look for a new bow, because that technology was getting old, a friend of mine at a sporting goods shop said, you ought to look at Matthews. They make a Conquest, which is a fingers bow. It was also 41-inch axle to axle. Another option was Hoyt. I shot both, and I really liked the Matthews Conquest, so he got me onto their, obviously I'm not on their shooting pro staff because I could not compete the way I shoot anymore, but I'm on their hunting pro staff, so I've been receiving new bows from them every year since I've been on their pro staff. So I've got Conquests, a couple that are 50 to 60 pounds, I've got a couple that are 40 to 50 pounds, and then in 2008 when I had my right shoulder surgery, they actually custom made me a 30 to 40 pound Conquest bow, and I shot it to start, you know, to tune up. I was shooting it at 30, and then I worked my way up to 35 and ended up at 40, and I killed a monster 10-point on public land in Illinois in December with that set at 40 pounds with a complete pass through with a G5 striker, 1.1/8 cut 3-blade head. And then when I went back to, you know, shooting my normal 50 to 60 pound, I usually shot them at 58 pounds. I always like to have a backup bow. So I always had two of the same bows typically. And 58 pounds for some odd reason was a sweet spot for me. I got decent penetration because I was shooting enough poundage and had enough velocity to shoot mechanicals, 1.5-inch cut rocket sidewinders. But then I had my left shoulder. I had surgery on my left shoulder, and that has changed things for the rest of my life without question. Also, with my age, I'm getting a pretty bad tremor, as you can see. Uncontrollable. My dad had it really bad too, and it continued to get worse into his 80s. But it's something you just have to deal with. Everybody says, well, why don't you shoot a crossbow? I will not shoot a crossbow. As long as I can shoot a legal poundage vertical bow, that's what I will shoot. I don't believe crossbows should be legal during the bow season because they're like short-range guns. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. It's irrelevant for most people because, I mean, as a sales rep, I'm seeing most of the stores I call on now, they are selling any place from 65 to 80, possibly even 90% of the bows they are selling are crossbows. Typical with hunters. Most hunters want the easy way out. That's the way they always are. Path of least resistance. So obviously you don't have to practice with a crossbow. You can shoot 50 yards with no problem, you know, no problem whatsoever without ever having to practice other than to make sure, you know, it's like a gun. You shoot a couple bolts through it before the season and it's dead nuts, and then you just go out hunting the rest of the year. You don't have to practice to keep your form in place, and you don't have to match arrows, you don't have to match your draw length and all that stuff. It takes the whole pro shop technology out of the equation when you shoot a crossbow. They're kind of like a one-size-fits-all ball cap. So I refuse to do that. Some point in time I'm sure I will, but until I become disabled enough where I have to, I'm going to continue shooting a vertical bow. So now I'm shooting a Halon X, which is a relatively heavy bow. I think it's 31.5-inch axle to axle. It's not something I pay a lot of attention to anymore because I'm shooting a release. But yeah, it's 31-inch axle to axle, shooting it with a peep, 3-pin sight, old PSE Mongoose sight, which is probably at least 30 years old. And I have that on all my bows. So I'm shooting a 3-pin sight on that, and pins are at 15, 25, and 35. And I'm shooting it at, I just raised it to 45 pounds because my shoulder's messed up. I was shooting it at 40. I've bumped it up to 45 pounds. That's what I'm going to be hunting with. And I'm going to be shooting a 4-blade G5 striker, which is, I think, 1 1/8 or 1 1/4 cut, but it's got an extra blade in it, so that's 1 extra blade of cut over the 3-blade striker. I'm also shooting, this is my backup bow, and this here is a VXR. I really like this VXR. It's a 31.5-inch axle to axle as well. So let me double check here. So actually, that Halon X is probably a 34 or 35-inch axle to axle because it's considerably longer than this. This one's 31.5. And I think they also make this in a 30. But this is a 31.5-inch VXR, same deal. Old PSE Mongoose sight. I just like how solid it is. I don't need all that extra junk on it. This one here though, because it's so much lighter, this is a considerably light bow where that Halon X is relatively heavy. I put a stabilizer down here on the bottom, kicking it out backwards so it's not in my way out front for interfering with anything. And I've got three extra weights on it. So this is a relatively heavy stabilizer, and it's made a huge difference in how well I can shoot it. It was to the point when I was holding it out, I was trembling quite a bit until I put that on. That extra weight, and also it making the bow tilt backward instead of tilting forward, or leveled it out better, I'm shooting it a lot better. I was actually going to take out another Halon X because I have 2 Halon X's, and I was going to use the other Halon as my backup, but it's a 50 to 60, which means I would have had to shoot it at 50 pounds. So this one's 40 to 50, that Halon X is 40 to 50, so I'm going to have both of these set at 45 pounds. They're set up identical, other than this one has the stabilizer. And I'm going to actually get up here and shoot a little bit, kind of to show you. I always shoot from an elevated position. I never practice on the ground. I take that back. Before season, because you never know when you're going to hunt from a ground blind or you get an opportunity while you're walking to a tree. There's always that chance. So I will take some shots just to make sure I'm shooting the same off the ground or similar on the ground, know where I'm hitting at least when I'm shooting off the ground than I am up on an elevated stand. And I'm shooting a Carter chocolate light thumber leaves. So something that's very simple. And I like this one because of, this is gonna sound really weird, because of my tremor. I'm actually, if I'm wearing a wrist release where I have to physically attach it to the loop when I get ready to take my shot, I'm actually that concerned about my tremor in low light situations, being able to find, you know, with my shake, find that loop and hook it to that loop when I need to do it immediately. So the cool thing about these is this here you can actually put, you can put it on your loop and just leave it hanging in the tree like that. So it's always ready. All I gotta do is grab the bow and grab the release. So that's the reason I'm shooting this. And I'm going to get up, I always practice from the top of my roof, and my yard kind of tapers down at a pretty severe angle, so I've got my targets out, you know, at 25, 35, and I got one a little bit farther. Then I got one at like 10 for a chip shot. So I like to practice from those elevations for 2 reasons, basically. I used to be an archery tech back in the 70s. I was a buyer for Michigan's largest sporting goods store at the time, and I was the main archery tech. Obviously, bows were way different then. Even the compounds didn't have the technology close to what they do today. But one thing I always have known, because I shot a lot of competition back then too, shot a lot of leagues, is when you shoot on the ground, you're standing up. So your body's perpendicular, your arms parallel to the ground. So everything's perfect. And when you're standing like this shooting, your eye, that anchor point down here, is going to be slightly different than when you're leaning down here when you're shooting like from a tree and you got your head tilted. When you tilt your head, it's going to change your eye to anchor point distance, which means your shot triangle from your hand where the bow is, or wherever the arrow's on the rest, to your eye, to your anchor, that triangle is going to be a little bit different. This distance right here is going to be a little shallower. So you're going to tend to shoot high if you practice from the ground and then you shoot from elevated stands where you're just picking your bow up, leaning down, and shooting like that. You're tilting your head, so you're going to have a different triangle, and your tendency is to shoot high. Now, if you do strictly practice from the ground, you can still shoot perfectly the same way from a tree, but you have to do something. You have to, when you draw your bow from a tree, you want to hold it parallel to the ground, draw your bow back so you've still got this same eye to anchor point height, and then you bend at the waist. So you're keeping that same triangle exactly the same. You bend at your waist down to your shot. That way that angle doesn't make any difference because you're still holding your same triangle. Probably the downside of that is if you draw like this and you make that movement, if you're in a pressured area, that's a lot of movement. I don't like making any more movements than I absolutely have to when I'm shooting at a mature deer in a pressured area. I may only get one opportunity a year. I have not had an opportunity to shoot at a mature buck in Michigan in 3 seasons. When I go out of state, I'll get 10 opportunities in a week. You know, most of them I pass on because I'm shooting for like 150s. But, you know, as far as just shooting at 125s, I'll give multiple opportunities in a week. Michigan, I haven't had one opportunity in 3 years. I haven't even seen a Pope and Young buck in 3 seasons. Complete seasons hunting all year. Out of state, I hunt for a week. And I'll see 8 to 15 or I've seen as many as 18 different Pope and Young bucks in a week. So it's different. And the deer in pressured states in the Northeast, they're just smarter. They just notice things. They pick up slight movements more. So anytime you draw and you make that big of a rigid movement, it's just that much more chance of getting picked. And I don't like taking any chances. I like to always work the percentages. So now I'm going to get up in the on the roof and I'll show you my little platform and I'll take a few shots. Now I'm up on the roof. I've got a ladder over on the side coming up here. And I built me a little platform years ago when I first bought this house. So this here's probably 20 years old. And it fits right over the peak. So I can stand on this and shoot my bow at these targets out here in the yard. Another thing I like about a longer axle-to-axle bow and something with a little bit of a brace height is when I'm hunting, I can actually carry the bow over my shoulder. So when I'm walking into my spots, I don't have to have a bow sling. I don't have to carry my bow in my hand, which gets to be a pain. So it's really, really nice with a longer axle-to-axle. And with a bigger brace height, this has 7 I believe, that you can carry it over your shoulder. Can't do that with really short bows and short brace heights. I mean, that's not a reason to buy a bow, but I kind of like that. And I really like Matthews. Matthews has been really good to me. I don't shoot with glasses on. And what happens with my glasses off is my pins are blurry. So my pin is going to be blurry, but the target's clear. So my distance vision's pretty decent. I can't read with my glasses off. So, you know, typically with whitetails, you know, it's not a big deal. You're shooting 30 yards max, usually, at least I am. So most of my shots are 12 to 20. So, you know, having a fuzzy pin on a big 14-inch, you know, chest-sized target's not that big of a deal. And I close one eye. And again, with a heavier bow for me, it it's just more stable because of my tremor. It sucks getting old, but that's the reality of life, and I just have to deal with it. Every time I pull my bow back, it compresses my left shoulder because of that surgery, and I've shortened my draw length considerably because of it. It's actually starting to rain a little bit. Perfect rain for hunting. I love hunting in the rain. It's just a struggle for me to draw this bow even at 45 pounds. I just jacked it up to 45 a few days ago, and I'm shooting every day, about a dozen arrows. Haven't got it totally zeroed in yet for season. In fact, I just had a new loop put on here 2 days ago. Right now I'm shooting at about 20, a little over 20 yards. I think this one's 23, 25 yards, somewhere in there. Something else I forgot to mention, when I shoot at targets, I don't like shooting at spots. When I shot leagues years ago, I got target panic shooting at dots. After several years, me and my team won every year we shot out there, and then it got to the point where I couldn't hold on a dot. So anymore, ever since the early 80s, late 70s, all I shoot at is silhouettes. All my targets, my 10 yard, this one here at 20 plus yards, that one over there at about 30, and the other one out there at about 40. They're just silhouettes. They're basically targets with a painted, literally with spray paint, and I'll show you pictures of deer. Because deer don't have dots on them, so I don't even like shooting at dots anyway. So this one here, obviously, because I've hit it so much in the spot, it's got a dot on it, but the other ones don't. I actually just painted them the other day, and I'll kind of show them to you at the different distances. But deer don't have dots on them, so it kind of forces you to pick a spot when you shoot at a target without dots on it. Otherwise, people shooting dots all the time, I know a lot of guys over the years that tend to body shoot because there's no dot on the side of a deer, so they tend to, center punch them in the body. And that leads to a lot of liver and gut shot deer, which are longer recoveries or no recoveries if you're hunting in a swamp where there's water, because you can't blood trail very well in the water, which I do a lot of that. So not having dots forces you to pick a spot on the actual hair. Okay, I'm up on top of the roof, getting ready to shoot. There's the targets. Close one there is 20, about 23, 24. Next one's 34, somewhere in there, and then the last one's a little over 40. And I always shoot at targets with no dots on them. That one looks like it's got a dot because that's where I've been shooting at it. So does the middle one, actually. But I like shooting at silhouette targets. Deer don't have dots on them, and I don't think targets should have dots on them either. That way you don't, you pick a spot. It forces you to pick a spot, not just a body shoot. And then my close target is right here. I've got some people working on my house. This one's right over the edge of the rough. Little block target. So I gotta be careful not to hit the gutter. Got some people working on my house, so that's why the
ladders are in the yard. But wanted to just kind of give you an idea of what I shoot from and how the hill drops off. So I'm replicating, I'm over 20 feet high right now to my feet. And the way the yard drops off, that outer target's at least 30 feet above that. So it'd be like replicating a 30 feet up in the tree shot. And I like shooting from this because when I aim at these targets, I'm going to have the exact same form as I'm going to have when I'm actually hunting. So I'm going to have my head canted at an angle downward. So my triangle is going to be the same. My eye to anchor is going to be shortened because of the tilt of my head, but it's going to be shortened in the same exact way as when I'm hunting. So my pins are going to be dead nuts. And again, if I sighted in off the ground, parallel to the ground, and then got up in a tree at this height, that's going to change my triangle slightly, and it's going to cause me to shoot 1 inch to 2 inches high. So on a tight shot, that could make a difference. So that's why I always practice from the roof. And again, I have a little platform built up here. Right there. I have a little platform up here that I shoot from, and to replicate hunting from a tree. Same shot angles, the same tilt of my head and bow.
Well, this here was shooting with my backup bow, my VXR, the next day, and it's doing okay. It's at 23 yards. So my bows are ready. Thank you for watching another episode of Eberhart Outdoors, and as always, I hope you can take something away from each episode, something to make you possibly more successful. And if you liked it, please hit like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Thank you.